What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to review The Last of Us Episode 3, the biggest change of the entire thing, right? At least so far. We'll see what else they do. And so we got to take a look at it. Now, I'm not going to actually say that I hated it. Maybe, leading into the show, the way I was approaching it, the bigger the deviation may be, maybe the more negative, I would become thinking about it. I don't think there was anything necessarily wrong with the show. And I will say this, in terms of it fitting in with what the show is doing, I actually think it was quite powerful. I actually thought it made a lot of sense in context. It really goes back to, and I'm probably going to focus on this quite a bit, what I was talking about last week with the test kind of things. And I feel like it works for what they're doing, but is it necessarily better than the game? And you could argue, Alex, is that fair to say it? It's just my honest opinion. I'm going to compare the show to the game. And I do look at it as something separate. And I do think that's an important thing to kind of throw out there. I think this show is really good, at least, as of now. I think this episode was pretty solid in context of the show. It's just continuing to build, literally, this kind of alternate reality, this alternate universe from the game. It's something that you do separate from the game. And do I prefer it over the game? Again, this is what I talked about last week. Do I prefer it over the game? No. I would take the game every day of the week. And I would say that for this episode. I do think there were some major moments in this episode that were really good. There was also some, obviously, big deviation, even besides the Bill and Frank thing, right? Obviously, setting that entire thing up, and even where they took Bill, at the end. But even having the Tess Joel thing, I actually loved that whole entire thing was awesome. I loved seeing Joel. Because one casualty, and spoilers, obviously, I basically spoil every single episode that I review, with Bill being dead, you don't get any of those moments. And I do think that's a negative. I do think not having those really fun Ellie moments with Bill in the game is a pretty big miss. I also think even having Joel kind of bounce off Bill, but to kind of, replicate that in a way, they did it in the past, right? They did it just a few years, I guess, not technically a few, after the outbreak, and they had, Tess and Joel meeting up with Bill and Frank, and I thought that was a really, really good just scenario in general. I like the idea of what they were doing in the beginning, Bill being this prepper, this guy that's ready for all this stuff, and I like that kind of stuff, like seeing everything, seeing him all prepared and getting everything ready, and I liked their relationship. I thought Bill and Frank were fine. I liked the Raider attack. One thing I will have to say, my wife actually pointed this out, and I do think this kind of highlights maybe a somewhat of a problem when you're kind of focusing on specific things is, so Joel warns about a Raider attack. Then they show a Raider attack basically to kind of drive home the point that, okay, this thing can't happen. And then, like, the next, I believe it's a 10-year jump from the Raider attack to, when present day, let's say, and nothing happened. So, like, they kind of foreshadow. Joel warns him that there's going to be, something like that could happen. It happens, and then nothing else happens for 10 years. And those are the kind of odd things you get when you're so laser focused on these two people. And so, again, positive and negative. I liked what they were doing. I liked the kind of, laser focus, let's say narrow focus on these two characters. And Nick Offerman as Bill, I do think was really, really good. On the flip side, you lose a lot of the Joel Ellie thing. They didn't do that. And it basically boiled down to Joel and Ellie showing up, and then Bill gave them everything, kind of in his will, right? It's like, just take everything. So it's like all those really iconic moments in the game, all of the Bill things, completely wiped out. Now, you did get the iconic, Ellie outfit. I actually thought the letter was extremely good. What's actually I just thought about this now, a big powerful moment in the game is kind of putting everything together, and because you get some tidbits of what happened, and then you get that letter right from Frank, and everything kind of gets put into context of what happened with Bill and Frank. In the show, it's actually still a letter, and it's to Joel, and actually so it hits very, very powerful to Joel because it's talking about protect Tess, keep Tess safe. And I think Pedro Pascal sold that. I think Bella Ramsey is Ellie. I think they all sold that. So I actually just thought about that now. That was pretty cool. A letter in the game and now in the show was pretty important, just actually for kind of two different reasons. It also comes down to potentially a personal preference. And what I mean by that is the idea of show, not tell, but also the idea of mystery. So let me kind of pitch this to you guys. So, like, it is a common practice, I think, and a better practice to show things, not necessarily tell them. So if you're looking at it just with that focus, you could say, well, they really built the relationship between Bill and Frank. Like, that was the entire point. Instead of giving you piecemeal, kind of info on this throughout Joel picking up, documents and stuff, they literally showed it to you. So in a way, show not tell. I am kind of a fan of that, so would I prefer it. Another thing, though, I do like is mystery, and it all kind of, comes together in one thing. An example I gave my wife, and this actually will apply later on to the show, is this. Ish, right? Ish, the leader of that underground group, and they had a school, and they built an entire civilization, and then things went really bad. The story of Ish is phenomenal. And the idea that you can learn that entire story of him by just picking up things throughout a couple hours, I think is genius. I think it's genius storytelling by, I guess, telling you it, but in a clever way. So the reason I bring that into this is, again, personal preference. Would you have preferred that the story of Frank would have been told, again, piecemeal kind of thing through Bill or through other things, and you didn't do what they just did here, you did more along with the game? That would be more telling, not showing, but in a clever way, I think. I think the game did it several times with Frank and then later with Ish. I thought they did it extremely well. Or do you prefer that they go, kind of all in? It's just a personal preference. I think it makes sense for the show. Clearly, the show is not, and we talked about this comes back up. This gets brought up. The idea with Tess, and there's really I guess the Bill scene is a lot of infected, right? I don't even think there's any humans involved. Last week I mentioned, are they staying away from humans for some reason, right? They're kind of focused on infected. Maybe it was a budget thing. Maybe it was this, or maybe they literally just wanted to tell a story that wasn't fleshed out. But see, I don't know. I don't know about, because I do think it was fleshed out in a certain way. They took a certain, I guess they did it a certain way in the game, and they decided, well, for television, we want to kind of bring that out. And what are we sacrificing? If we kind of focus on this thing that we didn't do in the game, but we just did it through gameplay and did it through, general findings, well, what would we sacrifice? Well, what you sacrifice is a lot of Joel and Ellie, and you sacrifice Joel and Bill, and you sacrifice Ellie and Bill, and gameplay moments, and Joel being pulled upside down, and all. Now, can you do that in a show? Again, these are the questions. It's not to put the show down. I don't want to come across that way, but it's something you got to think of, right? They sacrifice those moments, and whether those were too gameplay like for them to even think to do it right, it depends, and it depends on how you kind of viewed it. So one last time, I thought a pretty solid episode, specifically for what they were trying to do. I thought everything landed. I think the emotional, Bill and Frank kind of saying goodbye was awesome. I thought it was really well done. Nothing was necessarily bad. Then it just comes down to, did they have to do that? Or, would it actually have been better if they, follow the games, but you didn't have to follow the games 100%. This episode didn't follow the games almost at all, right? It's not necessarily even an argument of that one. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I'll see you all next week for the next episode review.